Welcome to the next exercise for Project 1. This is called a multi-object still life. So what you're going to do is add a second object to your little still life that you were using for your previous exercises. And then we are going to use the contour line drawing technique to create a still life and with volume and a strong composition. So let me go ahead and show you the still life that I am going to draw. Okay, so I had to move the camera, so it's a little shaky, but I decided to switch up what I'm going to draw. I'm going to put these binoculars next to this other cup here. And that way I have a nice composition. You can kind of see in the screen, I'm trying to line things up with the rule of thirds, and I've also put one object in front of the other, so there's a little bit of overlap. That's going to really help create a sense of space and dimension. So I have this cup in front of the binoculars, and they overlap a little bit. That's going to add some more space. So from this view here, you can see how I could then use the sighting technique to create some ratios. So I can get my proportions a little accurate. If I align my pencil with the top part of my cup and then my thumb with the bottom part of the cup, then I can get that measurement and then I can turn it over and then put it at, say, the bottom of the cup, and now I can realize how much taller the bottom of the top of the cup is to the bottom of the cup, right? The height versus the width. Right? So if that's my height here approximately, then I turn it over and I can say, okay, the height's a little bit taller than the width, right? And then I could also measure that in relationship to, say, the binoculars. So how much taller are the binoculars compared to my mug? And I'm noticing, hey, my binoculars, the main part of the binoculars is about the same height, and then it's a little bit taller up here. So I could get this measurement and sort of compare that to other areas. I could even turn it over and say, okay, what's the width relationship between, like how wide is the binocular piece to the width between them? And I could even do angles, like what's the angle relationship to the way that these binoculars are sitting on the ground compared to, say, the straight vertical side. So if that's vertical, I can then turn that and say, okay, it's about that length, or if that's perfectly horizontal, then that's the angle I need for the binoculars to read as though they are in that sort of 3/4 angled position. So that's how we can use sighting technique, and I'll link this to some better videos for more in-depth demonstration for you. Okay, now let me switch us back here. Okay, so now we're back at our drawing table. I've got my tools out that we're going to use, the pencil, sharpener, and eraser. I have also made a little 9 by 12 inch window here on my Canson Mixed Media drawing page. The reason I did that was so that I could have a very distinct picture plane to work from. So this is what we would call our picture plane, right? That is the entire piece that our composition is going to exist inside of. If it was just you were drawing on the whole page, then that would be your picture plane. But I'm drawing a little bit smaller here today just to help show and demonstrate some things for you. You're welcome to do yours in a little 9 by 12 inch window. I use my ruler to just map out a 9 by 12 inch ruler on my page. You're welcome to do that. You're welcome to use your sketchbook or just go ahead and use the whole piece of paper. So a couple things I want to introduce here is the concept of the rule of thirds. If you've watched the videos, then you've already learned about this. But here's how you can map it out. So if my top line here is 12 inches long, then I can just multiply it or divide that by 3, and then I can put some marks here, which would be at 4 and 8, because 12 divided by 3 is 4, and that's going to tell me where those third lines are. And then I'll just do it again here on the bottom as well, and then I'll connect those lines. And I'm going to use a very light pencil for this, so I'm just going to use my 2H, and I'm going to connect these lines, and I want to keep them very light so that way I can erase them later, because, you know, nobody cares about your rule of thirds lines, right? That's just a structure that helps you organize your composition, and then from there you can erase them later. So now I got to do this side. This is a 9-inch side, so that would be 9 divided by 3, which would be 3 inches, so that's at 3 and 6 in my ruler. And I'll do it one more time here on this side. And now I should have something doesn't seem right here. What's going on here? I guess that's all right. It just looks funny. Okay. Okay, so now I have it equally broken up into thirds here, and we really want to organize our composition along these third lines and put focal points at the intersections, and as best we can. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's just a structure to help guide you a little bit in your drawing, so that way you have something to base your composition off of. But you don't have to be, nothing has to be perfect. It just has to be approximate, and it will work. So I'm going to start thinking about how my objects exist inside my picture plane, so that way they are engaging the edges. If your objects in your drawings don't engage the edges, it'll look flat, the composition won't be as strong, and you'll have a lot of empty space. So I'm going to start by, again, lightly mapping out my objects using the gesture strategy. So this is where I could use my sighting technique as well to just kind of help map out my objects. Notice here, I'm just kind of very lightly put in a square that sort of represents the shape, because I'm just trying to get things positioned. And notice I tried to center that square right on the rule of thirds here. Now I'm going to start to map out where I'm going to put my binoculars. And that is also kind of like a square or a trapezoid. And notice how I'm drawing way out here. I'm just going to be very light about it because I just want to get something down here on the paper that gives me something to sort of look at and base my drawing off of. That way I can improve and correct along the way. Remember, we're moving from general to specific. So I'm just kind of mapping in the overall locations of where these objects are. So you should probably be able to lightly see that I have just a kind of a couple squares just to kind of place my objects very where I want them. And then I'll develop them a little bit later as I move to more specifics. So I've got kind of the center of my mug here, right along the rule of thirds. The intersection is going to be right where I probably have one of the design elements of the mug coming. I could maybe lower this down a little bit and put the entire center of this mug right here, but I think that's close enough. It's going to work. And now I'm kind of noticing, hey, the center of my binoculars is also going right through a rule of thirds. So that's pretty good. And then I also have the spot right here where these two things meet, right here on a meeting at a third line. So I've got a lot of engagement with my rule of thirds, even though it's not it doesn't have to engage everywhere. We really just need some good space. Other thing to notice how big I'm making everything. I'm really having my objects fill up the compositional space as much as possible. I really want my objects to command the space. If I made everything really small, then it wouldn't engage the picture plane, right? So that's why I map things out first like this to just help make sure I inhabit the picture plane very well. So now I can start to actually add some specifics here and start to actually draw my objects the way they actually look with some detail here. And I really recommend looking at your objects in person. Don't rely on photographs. Really get used to drawing objects from real life. And then that's going to help you build more volume along the way. So I'm still working pretty generally here as I'm trying to understand the sort of complexities of my objects here. And I don't know why I decided to draw this very challenging set of binoculars, probably just to give myself a challenge here, but it's definitely going to take me some time to work through all these complex forms of the binoculars. So I'm going to go ahead and just pause the video and come back so you don't have to. Okay, let me bring you back in here a little bit. So as I'm drawing very lightly so I can modify and fix things along the way. I recognized I have some things that were a little bit off, so I am drawing very lightly here during this sort of gesture stage to just really help improve. And I'm refining throughout the entire process. Notice that line's pretty flat. It's technically a little bit more curved this way. And this one being a little bit closer to me appears a little bit larger than the one on the left. So I'm going to make it a little bit larger. And I'm not worrying too much about erasing at this stage. Like if I make a mistake, that's fine. I want to be able to just draw as like loosely and fast during this stage so I can really work through everything, right? Remember, you got to really look at your objects as much as possible, right? We're looking at the object more than we're looking at the paper almost. And then as I build this and get things right, I just keep refining and adding more details along the way. Now these binoculars have a strange curve here. These are my dad's old binoculars. He gave them to me a long time ago as my first pair, so I kind of thought they would be a cool thing to draw today. Okay, so then I'm getting here. I'm going to stop there and just move on to some other areas so I can kind of just move this forward for you a little bit and show you some additional strategies. So I'm going to come back here to my mug here, and I'm going to start to really build the strategies that I learned in the previous exercise and start to refine my form and then alter the line weights here a bit so I can really emphasize the volume. So I'm starting to find out where shadows are, and I'm going to start making those lines a little bit thicker. Where I have two different planes meet, like the side of the mug to the top of the mug, I'm going to flare that out. And then as that curves around and changes shape and line, I'm going to take it from thick and taper it into thin. Now, there's a good highlight along the rim of the mug, so I want to make sure that I make 2 lines to describe the top of the mug. The big line here for the shadow, and then the thinner, lighter line for the top. And that's going to help ensure that I am revealing that whole dimension there. This cup is a bit irregular. It's a handmade ceramic cup that was wood-fired for you ceramicists out there. So it has kind of some fun, unique shapes and bulges here to draw. So I've got some shadows down here at the bottom. I'm gonna emphasize. There's a lot more shadows down along the base here that I want to emphasize. At the very bottom of the mug, there's definitely a lot of shadows because of the sort of the cast shadow that the mug projects on the floor. Technically, I do have some folds here too in my still life, so I might go ahead and put some of these folds in as well, just to kind of show a little bit about the environment here that this still life is sitting in. It's always important to draw backgrounds and where the objects exist and give them a story, a sort of place to live, rather than just drawing it floating in space. So I'm just going to keep developing this for a bit here. I've got some highlights. Remember, with the highlights, I can use little implied lines or showcase them through little broken lines. What else do I got in here? That would be good. Some students, you can really like to exaggerate the thickness of your line, and that's totally great too. Go ahead and exaggerate some of these lines. That can be fun. Notice how thick I made that line. Maybe I'll add some more thick lines that wrap up here into the shadow of this little bulge. I do have some sort of different colors on this mug that I can draw. Technically, there's also a little stamp right here from where the artist put their little name stamp, so you know who it's from. So I can kind of draw that in here. There's a lot of sort of cracks and round texture on this too, so I could start to add some of that in here. Let's go ahead and finalize the rim of this mug too, because that's going to be important. Right, the rim of the cup does have dimensions, so make sure you draw all the lines associated with that. The top of the rim does kind of feel like it overlaps there a little bit, so I'm going to extend that line. You probably can't really see it, but sometimes it's nice to just sort of extend some lines beyond to add a little extra volume and depth here. It is a little darker on the inside here, so I'm going to thicken that line here as it wraps around. And now I'm starting to really get some nice volume out of my contour lines. Now I can also do the strategy that I was describing by doing lighter lines next to my darker lines. So I can take my 2H or my 2B and I can put some, I like to do them a little thicker than the original lines. So if I make them a little bit thicker, then that starts to, add some additional volume to this piece here. And now I can just keep working on this until it's done, right? I'd say it might take, 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the complexity of your objects, but really try to build them and develop them as much as you can. I do have a cast shadow here, and a lot of students do ask, how do I draw this cast shadow when I can't use shading? So what I'm going to do is I am noticing the cast shadow follows the cross contours of the folds of the piece of fabric I have here. So I am going to try and render that idea a little bit here so I can kind of show that shadow exists there. Now I've just kind of drawn it as an outline. I might bring in a little bit of my lighter value here to emphasize it a little bit more, but I think the concept here is that the shadow doesn't have much substance, right? So if we make this feel like, give it a less dark line, it'll read as a shadow, but since it's not an actual object, then that's why I draw it a little lighter, is just because there's no substance to a shadow, right? It's just an illusion of the light source. So by putting that fun shape in there, I now have the illusion of a shadow coming through this piece. So yeah, now I can just kind of keep working it as long as my heart desires to really get the detail on here and get this image to where I want. I'm noticing I do have a strong highlight here, so I might go ahead with my 2H and kind of draw in that highlight, and I'll go ahead and finish this drawing a little bit more, and then I will post it into the exercise page so you can see the finished version. All right, everybody. Good luck and happy drawing.